In truth, Mr. Deputy, the performance of this administration has been beyond disappointing. Even in the years before the onset of Hurricane Dorian, they consistently failed to meet GDP growth projections. And what little growth we did see was very likely attributed to the opening of Bahama, which they opposed and opposed and opposed. Despite increasing taxes, you were unable to meet your revenue projections. Yet you persisted and do so even now in this budget, making unrealistic and very likely unattainable representations to the Bahamian people. Even in the years...
Thank you. Madam Chair, I recognize the Southern Shore.
Mr. Deputy, I move that the business of the House extends beyond the 7 p.m. hour.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House continues beyond the 7 p.m. hour. As many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. The business of this House will continue beyond the 7 p.m. hour. Chair again recognizes the member for Angliston.
Even in the years before Dorian and COVID-19, they did nothing to grow the economy. There's been no new paradigm, no exciting nothing. And in the midst of this stagnation of economic activity, prices soared, the tax burden increased, and wages remain stagnant, and suffering has set in. You've borrowed at staggering and unsustainable levels. As Exuma and Ragged Island pointed out, not only are you borrowing foreign currency to build sidewalks, but our interest expense is now bigger than the budget for education and health. So much for the claim of competent management, trusted and transparent oversight. The fourth thing, and I'm going to move quickly on this because this is where they constantly try to sell this notion that they are some trusted custodians of our sacred patrimony. Bear in mind, it was the FNM that gave away the Arawak port to 19 families and prohibited any other Bahamian from establishing a port or similar facility in New Providence for decades. Remember, it was this FNM and the member of Kalani himself who was right there sitting in the cabinet, supporting and promoting and defending these policies, including the giveaway of BTC. And I got the numbers, but I won't go into that because it's a sad story of what has happened with BTC, including the giveaway of the invaluable underwater fiber optic cable, which provides connectivity throughout the Bahamas with a spur to Haiti, which was invested at more than $353 million, just given away. They have a history of frittering away our patrimony. Now, that's the truth. They have a history of frittering away our patrimony. But we don't have to look backwards to see that this administration are not to be ever trusted with our patrimony. We saw the deal they tried to bring in for the so-called Oban deal. That involved hundreds of acres of crown land and seabed, and it's now being exposed as a very suspect enterprise in almost every way. And we must watch very carefully what is afoot with the marijuana industry, who is intended to benefit because we know how that goes. And on this note, I urge this government to respectfully listen to the Rastafarians who have been in their request to be lawfully permitted to engage in their sacrament. I am told that in the shadows of this administration has entered into a deal to divest for some 50 years, to divest the historic sites of our nation. Yes, and that includes the Water Tower, Fort Charlotte, Fort Castle, Fort Montague, the National Museum, Pompey Museum, Government House, and Botanical Gardens. They haven't had the courtesy to speak to the Bahamian people about what they are doing with our patrimony. And we would like to know, and I've seen some of the names and who they have, I'm told they've entered into an agreement with or seek to do so, are well-known supporters of this administration. And then I've spoken again and may have, thank you.
Sum it up in like 4 minutes.
Inquiring minds want to know who will be contracted to collect the overflight fees on behalf of the Bahamian people. We are hearing some things and we are watching. And what is the rumored plan to privatize and monetize the Doppler radar network, which belongs to the Bahamian people, and who is to benefit? I've spoken repeatedly in this house about the Prince George Dock, a giveaway of this administration. The Paradise Island Crown Land, the Bahamian shafted by this government for a foreign cruise company. We are waiting to hear the details on transferring the country's government buildings to the management of Hollow Esco Partners and how that is going to work. We don't trust you to negotiate for us. We still want to know whether a license has been granted for underwater treasure exploration from sunken vessels, and if so, to who and on what terms. We keep hearing about PPPs for our airports, which are gateways to our country, and whose ownership and management should never be compromised, with no details, no nothing. Who are you doing business with? It's sickening. Even the contract for LPIA was renewed with the management company there, with no detail, no information on our airport. We are watching the activity on Junkanoo Beach, which is allegedly taking away beach space for the public. We would like to know who is the lucky person that was able to acquire this space. Mr. Speaker, the words of Kalani and all others do not coincide with reality. They cannot be trusted. They have not honored the sacred trust of this people. And I